Alrighty, welcome everyone. This is the Graziers Toolbox. My name is Taylor Mulia, and I work for the Kibera Coalition and have been working with Grazing School of the West to put on this webinar series, and I'm so excited to be a part of it. So thank you so much for coming today, and special thanks as well to the Colorado Department of Agriculture, Next Gen Ag Leadership Grant, who has funded this series. Next slide, Hayden. All right, so if you haven't heard of the Kibera Coalition, we are a nonprofit based in Santa Fe, New Mexico. And through education, innovation, and collaboration, we work in coalition with ranchers, farmers, government agencies, and land stewards to foster resilience on working lands. So the program that is putting on today's series and that Hayden and I work for is the New Agrarian Program. We are an apprenticeship we run an 8-month apprenticeship on farms and ranches practicing regenerative agriculture in New Mexico, Colorado, and Montana. And apprenticeship applications for next season are actually due on November 15th. So if you or if anybody you know might be interested in taking a step into regenerative ranching, take a look at our website. It's kiberacoalition.org/newagrarian. Okay, and then before we kick it off, we'll just do a land acknowledgement. So Kibera Coalition's offices are located in Oga-Pa'oge, the original Tewa name for Santa Fe. This is the ancestral and present-day homelands of the Tewa, Toa, Tiwa, and Keres-speaking Pueblos, and the Jicarilla Apache. We recognize Indigenous peoples as the original and long-standing stewards of this land. Their extensive knowledge and practice of agriculture and land management established the foundation of land stewardship in the Southwest. We recognize that the land and this knowledge was forcibly taken and appropriated from Indigenous peoples. As fellow stewards, we honor and respect the land and peoples who have cared for this land since time immemorial. And we commit to continue building partnerships with Indigenous peoples. So thank you so much for joining us. I will hand it off to the Grazing School of the West.
Thanks, Taylor and Hayden. Thanks, everyone, for being here. It's great to see so many of you. And my name is Olivia, and I'm going to share my screen and get started. All right. Hopefully that looks good to everyone. All right. So we are here for two-part deep dive into why would we want to start a grazing business. And I just wanted to take a minute to thank our partners at Kibera who have been wonderful colleagues and comrades in so much different work that both Cole and I do. And it's been great to be able to bring a series to Kibera in this last year. We've done a number of different workshops, or I've done a number of different workshops with them. This one's the first partnership with the Grazing School of the West, which we'll talk about in a minute. And so just thanks to Kibera for continuing to put out great content. So as I said, my name's Olivia. I am an educator and a consultant and an advisor. I work with food and farm businesses, and my passion is working on the ins and outs of strategy and finance and operations with all of you all. Those of you who are entrepreneurs and those of you who are not entrepreneurs. And I come from a long background of farming that moved into food service establishments and other entrepreneurial endeavors. And after many years as an entrepreneur, I decided that it was much more meaningful to invest in other people's ideas. And so that's how I orient my day, is around all of your dreams and what you see as your vision and your horizons. I'm from California originally. I'm based overseas. My husband's a producer, and that's why I'm over here, but I work all over the States. And I'm going to pass it off to Cole to say hello, who's my co-presenter here today.
Thank you, Olivia. Good morning, everybody. I'm so thrilled to see so many familiar faces and names. Just want to let you all know you are part of a big herd. We just found out we had over 100 registrants today, so that's really exciting. My name is Cole Bush, Brittany Cole Bush. Friends call me Cole. I'm the owner-operator of Shepherdess Land and Livestock, a prescribed grazing business based out of Southern California. I've been in the biz now. I've been trying to figure out if I'm still considered a young farmer rancher, and I think I am. considering census stats. I've been in this business for 14, almost 15 years now, and I'm excited to talk to you a little bit about my journey and oh gosh, the opportunities we have in this awesome world of grazing for good. I'm also the founder and director of Grazing School of the West. It's been a long time brewing project of mine to understand how we can support the next generation of grazers in our context here in the American West, which is really different from other places in the world. Pastoralism prevails in almost every continent. And I think that we're a part of telling the story of our neck of the woods in this part of the world. So I'm excited to be here representing Grazing School of the West, as well as being a first generation agrarian. And take it away, Olivia.
Thank you. Okay, so our conversation today is focused around business planning foundations, which we're going to address in the sort of universal sense, as well as it pertains to prescribed grazing. So I'm going to kick us off with grounding our conversation and what business planning is all about. And then we're going to talk with Cole about what prescribed grazing is all about and how planning a prescribed grazing business is slightly different, and get into some of the nuts and bolts of prescribed grazing businesses. And then we have some resources for y'all. And as Taylor mentioned, this is a two-part series. So today is really foundational business planning and decision making. Next week is tools and tips and tricks with some templates and some names of, not just names, but exploration into some of the tools that we use, both sort of universally, right, in terms of operations. So you're thinking about starting a business. Hooray, the world is open to you. And, we're here to say that being a successful grazer means much more than being a farmer, a rancher, a grazer, a person of the land. It also means being a dedicated business person. So that means being extremely bold and ambitious, and really believing in yourself, right? And so that starts with knowing your purpose and articulating what is really driving you to do this work. And no better place to start than by actually defining your core values and thinking about what is going to drive your own well-being inside of your business, understanding your mission and your personal vision. And for those of you who have done some holistic management studying and work, what's your holistic context? So if you're wondering about what all of that is, we conducted a leadership course that dives really deep into that kind of thinking as an elementary fundamental practice for planning a business. And the link is live here. You all will receive these presentations tomorrow. And it's also still housed on the Kivira website, as well as their YouTube as our leadership workshop, like I said, from earlier this year. And it dives really into what core values are all about. But to give you a little tidbit of what that course talks about in terms of where our sort of center point is in terms of designing a business is they are these unchanging qualities that are the most essential piece of your business, right? And they manifest in everything that you do when they are well defined. They're like your beacon, they're your lighthouse, they're that bright light that's spinning around out there to keep you sort of calm in the rocky seas, I would say, and integrating them fully into your life work is surprisingly not upper level thinking. It can be surprisingly practical thinking and help you with day-to-day decisions. And really, ethical leadership starts with knowing your own core values. And it's a super fun exercise to actually explore those. And we have that exercise available to you. So again, if you're interested in that, get in touch. I'll point you to the right direction. It's also what we all outside of your universe perceive your business as. When we can see your core values being lived every day inside of your activities, then we know who you are and what you are. And that's another way of saying your brand. So, what is a business plan? I'm going to talk a little bit about business plans in the like I said, universal sense, and then we're going to apply what that planning looks like to grazing businesses. What's a plan? It's probably something that, for those of you who have never dabbled in creating one, that sounds intimidating. I certainly was very intimidated before I wrote my first business plan, and I was starting from scratch with absolutely no training whatsoever in anything even remotely connected to business or management, let alone the businesses that I was actually designing either. I was fully just going into it blind. And so that's me telling you that that level of vulnerability and courage is also a wonderful starting point for any entrepreneur. So a business plan is what I like to say, a dynamic document that outlines the plan and outlines your ways of achieving your goals. It's not, however, something that you write and then leave alone. It's not the Bible that then gets covered in dust. It is, I like to think of it as a living, breathing workspace that holds, it's the vessel for your ideas as they evolve and as they change. And instead of having a bunch of notebooks lost under the bed and in the bookshelf and in the car or sticky notes, eventually the business plan allows you to have a container for those dreams, right? It's the explanation of your big vision through much of the detail. And the detail is what validates that vision. It is what describes first and foremost to yourself how you will actually achieve these ideas. And on-farm learning is a fundamental place to start. But the creative space of actually researching and organizing your thoughts into a plan is just as valuable as that on-farm learning. And what we're doing is displaying thoughtfulness and follow through in understanding what is actually going to take to get it done. And again, that display is first and foremost for you as the most important audience. And it has narrative, and it has numbers, and it has timing and people. And do you have to write one? My whole business is fundamentally organized around me answering yes to that question. I would like for you to have a vessel that holds your ideas. I would like for you to have a roadmap. I do feel like it will allow you, it will set you up for better success. Again, not to take away from trial and error, and not to take away from on-farm experience and learning through others or just doing it. But it's a bit of the skeleton to what you're doing, which we need to move forward. It also communicates to other people your concept. That can be your potential business partners. It can be people that work for you, stakeholders, people that you love, eventual funders. And it's just the architecture behind what you have. Because unfortunately, for those of you who are really just very excited about production, if you are also thinking about going into business, it isn't just that, right? It is marketing, it is managing, it is financing, it is businessing. And not that you have to be an expert in all of those things, but you do have to be able to be comfortable approaching them and getting to know them. So there are different formats for business plans for different uses. What I'm suggesting that you do is create a baseline world to house your thinking. And then from there, you can tweak it for whatever use case you need. As an example, if you're going to a traditional bank, they don't really need to read a 50-page business plan or a 20-page business plan. They might just want a cute little executive summary. And so you can extract different aspects of that plan for different use cases and for different readers. So I'm going to walk us through the different concepts and components of a plan that I like to see people thinking through. And again, this is not from the perspective of an investor. It's not from the perspective of a lender or a potential partner. It really is from the perspective that you need all of these things to be able to actually be successful in running the thing. And as an outcome of this, or as an add-on to this workshop, we'll be sending you tomorrow exactly what you see here on the screen in business plan templates that are annotated. So they basically give you these sections that you can work on in chunks and go into in it. Also, I suggest a non-linear fashion, moving through your writing and your research and your thinking in the areas that feel easiest and most exciting to you to work on. And it can absolutely take many different shapes and be visual and be drawn and then be collated into other formats as needed. But essentially, these are the pieces of thinking work that I'm looking for somebody to have done when I am gauging whether they actually can plan a business, right? So first off is your core concept. We're giving a quick overview. We're just defining what the overall idea is. And this is your home for your values and your mission and your vision. And again, be in touch if you're confused about how to attack those. And then I like to hear a little bit of the philosophy. What is really driving you to create this business, considering what I call the quadruple bottom line, right? Considering your business in terms of people, planet, profitability, and purpose, right? Why are you doing this? Then we've got the product. The product just means, what are you doing? In farming and ranching, we think in enterprises. We also have lots of adjunct services that many farm businesses engage in that generate revenue or not. So we want to hear about all those. What are all the key activities that you're doing, and how are they interacting with each other to support the overall mission of the business? So this includes essentially all the different departments that you would want to be activating. And if you don't know yet, that's okay. We've got preview is in the end of your templates. You've got a future vision that you can dump all the things that you're maybe thinking about too. So examples here, grazing services. We're here in a grazing workshop. But you might also have the very commonly seen byproducts of your grazing business, which are lamb and beef, potentially lamb or beef or bison or goat meat, potentially wholesale wool, potentially agritourism, Airbnb rentals. All of those things are examples that they could be housed inside of your single business, right? Sales channels are, how are you selling your product and services, right? The revenue streams for all of the different things that you are putting out there into the world. So we commonly think of these in terms of maybe wholesale, retail, direct consumer, and they connote your audience, who's actually buying. And we're going to get to that audience definition in just a minute. I like to hear a little bit about pricing, how are you thinking about pricing? And for those of you who are thinking, well, gosh, I have no idea, ding, 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 that means that you have some research to do. And really, the business plan template is just a place for you to understand not just what you know, but what you don't know yet, and what you're going out into the universe to find out about through talking to people, through doing actual in-field research, right, about your dream. So that's in the market. The next place that we like to think about is your overview for all of your way that you're going to talk to the universe to get them to buy your product and services, right? So we look at all of the different enterprises and we want to connect those to different audiences. Who is your ideal customer? And make sure that you have an idea of who those people are. Oftentimes, farm and ranch businesses and food businesses, that's the sector that I work in, start from a place of what the land base wants, or start from a place of what someone's expertise is. And that is wonderful and somewhat obvious. But the real, I would say, acumen comes from those that look at what the market also wants. What is able to be sold? What are people around you asking for? Not just what is the land asking for and what are you asking for? And matching those two worlds together is the only route to successful business. So knowing who and to whom and how you're going to sell the things that you produce is just as fundamental as understanding the carrying capacity of the land and your physical capacity to do the work. Competitive landscape, knowing a little bit about other people that are doing similar, running similar businesses around you. And then how you're special. What's the competitive advantage? What's the value proposition? What those words mean is what makes you different. What are the factors of what you're doing that will separate you from your competitors? And I use that word really lightly because competitors, I feel like, is we live in this world where competition is innate and almost driven by the individualistic DNA that is baked into like this country, for example. And I like to remember our competitors are also ready-made colleagues, right? And so flipping the switch on how we look at our competitors and working from a space of community-centric thinking rather than individualistic thinking. But we still want to know why you're different. And that helps us know more about why you're going to be able to sell your products and services. And again, don't be confused about those words, products and services. We're talking about the service of grazing. We're talking about the product of meat, right? They're just somewhat more benign terms to house whatever it is that you're fitting into your business. So then we talk a little bit about objectives and marketing, like what's your goal for getting the word out into the world? And then we have a plan, an actual marketing plan that talks about the actual initiatives that you're going to do. Are you going to do social media? You're going to have an e-commerce store? Are you going to hire a big PR firm? Are you going to drop letters in people's mailboxes? I know plenty of people that have done that to very good results. Operations, internal systems. This is kind of the easy part. It's like, what's going to make the thing run? General and administrative systems for running your business. And we're not looking for deep detail here, but if something is fundamental, like Cole's going to talk about water systems and fencing, if it's fundamental to your business, then we want to hear a little bit about it because we also want to see how you're going to buy it, right? And what happens if you don't have it and you need it? Land and location, let yourself know what the plan is. If it's not already secured, what kind of land base are you looking for and why? What does it need to have? What features does it need to have on it? Or what can you acquire over time? And time can be long time, it doesn't have to be all ready-made, ready to go. And equipment and infrastructure. You get it. It's in alignment with the rest of these things. It's just the big dog stuff that's going to power what you do. Supply chain. Who are the connectors that you need to make this thing work? Who are the relationships that you need to build? Nobody's saying you have to have them, but you need to be able to identify them, right? So if you are planning on selling lamb, who is processing that lamb? Convince yourself, again, first and foremost, that you have a feasible way of getting your lamb crop harvested and to slaughter every year before you start lambing, please. Permitting, licensing, labeling, compliance. Again, nuts and bolts. What do you need to be selling, where you're selling, what you're selling, based on federal regulation or tribal regulation. And then a little risk analysis. We want to know that you can understand some of the problems that might shoot up. This is a place to kind of unwind those dreams and make sure you're realizing not just the risk of starting a business, but like technically what can actually happen. What happens if you hit a 10-year drought? What happens when that freak hurricane comes through? It's not all weather events, but those seem to be the most dramatic these days. What happens if your production doesn't really hit what you expect it to in the first or second or third year? How would you reroute? And you may not actually really know, but you can certainly take a guess. Then there's the people. Big power, the big power of the operation. And so that's you as the principal, anybody else that you're planning on having on level with you as a business partner or stakeholder, anybody that's an outside investor, even if you haven't identified that person. But if you know that you want a partner, that you don't want to go it alone, let's talk about that, right? And then define who's working in the business as well versus who's kind of out there supporting you. An organizational chart is the way that the people relate to each other. And this has lots to do with the next one, roles and responsibilities. So who's in what roles and why, and how do they relate to each other? I like to think about it in terms of like the flow of activity, right? And then any other strategic relationships that you might have. This can be vendors, service providers, collaborators, people that you know the business is going to be based on actually being powered by as well. Then there's the financial section, which we like to see in the form of a spreadsheet. And I'm using we really loosely, like we is you, right? And then eventually there's all the other we's. There's the business partners, there's the boyfriends and the girlfriends and the significant others. Then there's the bank, right? So there's lots of we's. But we like to see it in the form of a spreadsheet, and we like to see 2 years. That's ideal. A year isn't really going to give us enough time to think that we've understood the ups and downs of what starting a business might actually entail, and the instability that the beginning of the business shows. And when I teach budgeting with my colleague Anjali Oberoi from Bernoulli Finance, we like to talk about 5 years, because 5 years is, if your new business is at a loss for 5 years, we're really not going to care, because it's kind of after that that we think that things should have gotten themselves together. And that's specifically in new food and farming businesses, especially farming businesses. So don't be afraid of showing if things don't look good. I think that that's okay. And I don't think that very many people will tell you that. But it's true, because if it's all looks very good from day one, we're going to say, we don't really think you've planned really well, because probably it's not going to look that good at first. Capital expenditures. What's the budget for all the big stuff you have to buy? What's the equipment that you need on day one? What's the equipment you need on 6 months down the road and a year down the road? What can you kind of like sort of slowly work towards? And that's all really in ideally spreadsheet form. And if that's intimidating, start on a piece of paper. Just start exactly where you are, and then use the resources around you for bringing that up to a next level on an as needed basis, right? For that other set of viewers. What's important is that you're doing the thinking work. And then we have like to see a little vision, a financial narrative. This is helpful for outside viewers, right? Is talking through the things that your spreadsheet has shown you. When does it look like you're gonna turn a profit? When does it look like you need to pull in some debt? What does the debt service look like? Meaning, what do the payouts look like? And how are you planning on raising money? Some potential funding sources, some potential grants that you might go after. Again, when you get nervous because you don't know, that just means you have more to learn. And now you have a container for those learnings once you gather them. And the last section is really about beyond this initial idea and also within, right? So what are you planning to see the community grow with in terms of your business? What is your intersection with those around you? How does the larger agricultural landscape change as you provide and offer this service to it? What metrics are you going to gauge yourself on? Which benchmarks? What are your benchmarks of success? And in values-driven work, we think about those benchmarks far beyond financial, right? What is the spiritual and environmental and natural and social capital that you are looking to bring to your context? How are you going to keep yourself smart? What are you going to do in terms of ongoing learning? How are you going to seek out ongoing professional growth? And then tell us the really big dreams. This is like the holding pen for all the things that sound a little half-baked and that you're scared that they're really bad ideas financially to kick off with your business. Stick them in the future vision. We want to see that creativity, and we want to see sort of, well, I really want to see how big your dreams go. I may not want to see them in the first 2 years, and I may not want to see you lose that much money because you start 10 different enterprises all at once, but tell me where you want to get. And get excited about it. So the message behind all this is, don't worry. It might be intimidating, but I guarantee that it is an asset to you to do this type of planning. And a lot of these elements you probably already considered, and we're just compiling them in one location. And it can be seen as an opportunity to really dig in, to go through this process. And I can tell you firsthand that the process of writing it is super illuminating and will absolutely change your plans that you thought that you were really set on if you ask yourself to create a bit of a uniform vision. So again, the resources we're gonna give you are the actual business plan templates. And then I have an annotated executive summary, which is based on a series of questions and is a much shorter format and really asks you to define the key points of each of those sections. It's a very digestible template, or I think it is, and I'd love your feedback on it. So I'm going to send all of y'all both of those things in our follow-up along with this presentation. And from there, I'm going to turn it over to Cole to get into what makes a grazing business different. Oh, okay. And hold your questions. Sorry, we're going to do Q&A at the end. So drop them in the chat or put them on a piece of paper and we'll get to them at the end.
Oh my gosh, Olivia, I had so many questions and I'm like, my notes are insane. So I'll be one of those people. So good morning again. I'm so stoked to see all of these faces. Hi, everyone. Okay. Thank you so much, Olivia. This is really exciting for me, y'all. Olivia has been my human herding shepherd through my whole entire career. I can attest to working with Olivia through these processes to get me where I'm at today with 2 successful businesses defined by a variety of things, not just cash money, but yay, living out my dreams. And so I'm just super thrilled, Olivia, to be following up and kind of walking through using, my experience as a case study in going through this whole process. We recognize that some of you might not be at we are ready to start a business, or you might be already in business, but our goal is to illuminate all of these steps that we take in building a business or building a career that is meaningful. We have to understand the business aspect to actually go through this. So I did want to make a couple things, points that just popped off of mind, is that even if you're in the beginning of your career or you're still trying to figure out what your next steps are in this work, actually doing something similar as a business plan for yourself as your own entrepreneurial plan will help you to define some of the most important pieces in our work, which is quality of life and resilience. Quality of life and resilience. So it's not just about being a business owner, but like, how do we want our lives to be? And what are the hard lines? If you haven't seen your partner in 2 months and you haven't been eating enough, and there's all of these things that you're just like, I'm talking from personal experience, as you can, yeah. That you really need to go back to like, this process of a business plan and your holistic context. We're doing what we do because we want a quality of life where we feel a reward, be it feeding our people, stewarding the land, not being in front of a computer. Thank you, everybody who's not into the computer scene. We're happy to be here. Sorry for that preamble. I just wanted to qualify how critical this process has been And and one last piece. Okay, so who of you are in like ranching and farming because, you know, normal business as usual is you want to be outside and observe the world? Well, that's me. I am a visual thinker. Thank you, Temple Grandin, for helping me find my way. I suggest if business plan at this stage is really overwhelming, think about images that you can plug in instead of words. And I've been really thinking a lot about that as I'm refining my business plan. So without further ado, to my presentation, just had to jump on that, Olivia. It was very exciting. Thank you. Okay.
Awesome. Thank you, Cole.
Yes. Okay. And let's begin.
We manage sheep and goat grazing here in Southern California for fire prevention, helping to support fire-safe and fire-ready communities that butt up against open spaces that are fire ecologies. Managed grazing is increasingly being used where the terrain and topography doesn't allow mechanical clearing and other types of clearing to occur. We're able to go in landscapes in very dense vegetated areas and open up space, slowing down the potential if there was a fire.
Sheep are providing the beneficial disturbance that ecologies need in order to continue regenerating, especially in areas that are too weak or too steep for cattle to get to.
Sheep are ruminants. They are able to take vegetation and pass it through their system, and on the back end, they're creating fertilization. Sheep are incredible. They yield food and fiber, and in our communities, they're providing fire hazard prevention and helping to manage landscapes that need restoration and to create more resilience.
All right. Sorry, I thought you needed a visual there and some like really intense music to get us going. All right, I'm going to fly through some of this stuff, but there's always more. So hold your horses on questions, and I am there for you. We are here for you. So if you don't get everything you need at once, it's okay. All right. Here we go. I wanted to actually start. I pulled up my future vision years ago when I was ideating shepherdess land and livestock. So I just thought I would start with that. I just pulled that in there. The future vision is the thing that gets me really excited. And it's somewhat of my center compass when I think about what am I doing with this business? Where are we going? Well, we want big impact, and that's why I'm doing what I'm doing, and sharing all of this is because we need, I believe, regional solutions for regional challenges, and we are all responsible for our communities. Also in Southern California, I think we have actually a lot of similar topographies and similar ecosystems. In Colorado, I know we're kind of Colorado focused today. That video that you saw, wow, that was 110 degrees when that was shot, and it did not look great when we shot it. But if you were able to notice, our body condition of our animals was quite impressive, and I'm very proud of that. And we'll talk a little bit more about it. So we're here today to talk about custom grazing and contract grazing. Well, guess what? The state of California just passed a bill that brings prescribed grazing as the language that's written into the public resource code. That's a big win. That means prescribed grazing is on par with prescribed burn, recognized by the Board of Forestry and CAL FIRE. That prescribed grazing needs to be resourced by the state and by communities and counties and cities and all of it. And that's huge. And what does that mean for some of you who are looking to start your businesses or in business in the West in prescribed grazing or thinking about integrating? Well, California's setting the pathway for policy and for written language and law that will support our industry. I feel that resilience is diversity, diversity is resilience, and prescribed grazing, I feel, is one of the most, I think it's one of the most rapidly growing industries and opportunities. And that is why I'm going to sing far and wide about it. And I am a sheep and goat gal. I'm kind of terrified of cattle, believe it or not. But this also applies to you all working in cattle. And I have run cattle too. So I love them too. All right. So this is the definition of prescribed grazing in the California Public Resource Code that just was adopted only a few months ago. So this is really exciting. So I'm going to use prescribed grazing as the definition of my prescribed grazing business, also known as contract grazing, custom grazing, interestingly enough. Contract grazing, getting paid graze has also been used. Custom grazing has also been used for that. But traditionally, custom grazing is a grazing manager who manages other owned livestock. And this is a really interesting, this traditional custom grazing method is really interesting when we think about prescribed grazing, because a lot of us don't have the cash money to buy a whole bunch of animals, right? But what if you can stack functions with custom grazing, actually taking other folks' animals, running them? You're going to have to be really good at animal husbandry to put gain on them or to maintain body condition. But we actually have some opportunities for stacked function. So this does also apply for cattle, folks. You can run sheep and goats with cattle. I cannot speak to how that works in different contexts, but I've seen it happen with various degrees of success. All right. So the grazing, why prescribed grazing? We're using grazing as a, sorry, I have all of these screened up so I know where I'm at. Okay, we're using prescribed grazing to achieve a specific goal, ideally to treat a systemic issue, not just the symptoms. We're trying to thank you. We're trying to address a whole system, and that includes the processes and ecology that are going to support resilience and the impacts of climate change, but are going to support achieving our goals. And so some of these pieces here are what are the levers that we can use in our prescriptive grazing approach. And there's a lot of you who are prescribed grazers, and guess what? Y'all may be working with different animals or different breeds in sheep and goats or even cattle. I think it's really important to recognize the importance of choosing the right animal for your context. And for us, we used hair sheep and Spanish boar cross goats, and they do a great job for us. But in other parts of the country, perhaps it's not the appropriate animal. Also, we'll talk a little bit more about breed selection. I can go deep into that. But again, these are all of the levers that help us in using our prescriptive approach to grazing. There's other opportunities in prescribed grazing outside of how we make our money as service providers. Shepherdess Land and Livestock actually is almost solely a prescribed grazing business. The majority of our revenue that we're making is actually through our services. It is not through meat, it is not through wool, and it is very little through sales on the hoof of animals. So the cash money in California is really from, for our services, is for fire fuels abatement. And that has really been the main driver of the ability for us to get work. But there's a lot of other opportunities, stacked enterprises that can come into this that Olivia has already talked about. You'll see sheep in the vineyards, in orchards, and crop systems. The Gaudin Lab of UC Davis, Amelie Gaudin, has conducted a lot of research on the benefit of integrating livestock into our crop systems. And there's a lot of other additional exciting byproduct stack functions that can help with water retention, soil fertilization, things like that. Byproduct being, I know I have a friend on here who's super stoked on wool pellets. Wool pellets is a good one, everyone. Solar voltaics. American Solar Grazing Association is also something to check out for those of you who have solar farms and the grass grows more than it does down here in Southern California. There's a lot of opportunity for commercial outfits to jump into solar grazing. So the benefits and considerations why prescribed grazing is being used as an alternative to chemical and fossil fuel dependent machinery, there's a lot of them. And when we're grazing in urban, suburban places where it's populated, mind you, we get paid a lot per acre because we are in crazy places like this. Risk is a huge factor in how we are bidding. But these are some of the benefits and why a fire department or a private client would choose prescribed grazing over some of the other alternatives. Again, these are, when we're evaluating our projects, these are some of the fundamental pieces we have to consider when we're thinking, how are we designing this project? Of course, it comes with our goal, the goals of the project. That's our own outfit goals, our personal goals, the client's goals, and our goal to save the world. Project goals have to, like I said, we make our money through the fire fuels abatement. However, we recognize an ecology and balance is going to allow for us to achieve our goals in fire fuels reduction and mitigation. Why? Because we're focusing on ecosystem function first and foremost. So what I realized coming into this work is I was really excited about the land stewardship aspect. But I realized that in talking about our work, really, if we're getting hired for fire fuels mitigation, we talk about that. We learn fire ecology and how our animals achieve fire fuels abatement work. But really, internally and also our opportunity to educate clients, we talk about the importance of the our grazing prescription really addressing a ecology and balance. Fuel break that I love to show, that was efficient. They're all hanging out, they're healthy, and there's fancy homes up on the left-hand side. That's in East Bay Regional Parks District in the Bay Area. So I also, Grazing School of the West. I also wanted just to point out too, for those of you who are really Grazier curious, and I'm looking at it time, OT, not overtime, Olivia, time. There are so many jobs that are associated with being a grazer. You don't have to be a grazer to be a grazer, if that makes sense. We need all kinds of folks with different skill sets. You know, we really do. It's not just being a shepherd. It's not just being a boss. It's all of these things. And some of us can wear a lot of hats and are happy doing that. And some of us aren't. Put me in front of a whole bunch of people and I can turn a project that's gone sideways into a great PR stunt. Not a lot of land and livestock people are as excited about song and dance as I am. That's okay. We need all kinds of people. Maybe you need to find somebody to do your PR, for example, who also could be, you know, wear a different hat in your operation. I did also want to point out that in our business planning and ideation, or if you're in business or you want to be in business or have a job, it takes time to build a team. You know, unless you're really capitalized from the get-go, it might be you building fence, but what do you come back to? What's the quality of life that you want to have? If you don't want to build fence forever and you want an employee, you're going to have to start thinking about how much revenue am I going to need to generate to have the employees that I need. I knew from the very get-go that I was not going to be the shepherd fence builder from the get. I knew I needed somebody else to do that because I knew what it was going to take to start the business. So I know that it's hard financially to justify an employee, but if you think about your sanity and quality of life, it's really important to have a goal. If it's not going to be you forever, where do I need to be at with my business within a year, 2 years, 3 years, 6 months to be able to achieve the goal of not being your own fence builder? So when I say there's a lot of career paths, a lot of hats, being a practitioner in the field is just one of those things.
Can I also just jump in real quick and just say, to assuage everybody's fears, no one has the money to pay their first employee ever. Just know that. It's okay. No one ever, nobody's like, you don't wait till you have all the money to pay that first employee sitting in the bank. It's a big step, and I'm so glad that you mentioned it, Cole, because it's never going to feel like the right moment, but it catapults you to that next step of letting go of the fence building. So
that's right. Thank you. I did also want to say on the yes, very important. The Resilierator through FarmLink is a really awesome training, 8 weeks or something like that. And what I learned when I was first starting my business through the Resilierator is the importance of having our labor be legal, especially in California. We need to really look at how do we get, of course, we don't always start this way, but how do we build a business that is legal and risk is reduced in all of the ways we possibly can? Because prescribed grazing and custom grazing, even if you're in a rural setting, there's high liability involved. And we really need to make sure that we're building businesses that are fair, equitable, safe, and legal. So I highly recommend in your neck of the woods, in your state, to really understand labor laws and have that be your goal. And that was my goal within a year and a half, that I was fully above board and everything I was doing was legal. I don't know, I'm probably still breaking the law somewhere, but it is my aspiration to do this work in the ways I just said, legal, labor, especially. Okay. Talked a little bit about this piece. You're going to really need to know what you like, what you don't like, what you're good at, what you're not good at. And at some point recognize that you will not continue to be happy in this work unless you either build skills that you might not want to build, or you're going to have to outsource some of these things. And I highly recommend carving out a budget for having the help that you need, be it bookkeeping, tax accounting, various professionals and service providers. And in some cases, maybe those service providers, like in Olivia, Tincani, or another type of professional, may support you in a capacity where you can be able to work, have viability in being able to work for them, even if you're cash poor. There are creative ways to do that. And I think that everyone we work with are our partners and want us to succeed. And we also want them to succeed in supporting us. So that's something to also take in mind. Delegate and outsource the tasks when you're very low capacity. Say you're exhausted, you've been in work for a long time, or you've been working for a long time. Don't cut the corners, pay payroll on time, workers' comp on time, insurance, all of that stuff. And if you need help, try to outsource it before your tank is empty. Well-being and quality of life is so important to come back to, especially in light of, I I'm looking at OT's face. Okay. And especially of light of the impacts of climate change from my own personal experience. We in Shepherdess, pretty much every year I've been in business, we've been hit by 1 to 2 recognized natural disasters. Lambing and kidding in atmospheric rivers several years in a row has made me almost lose it, my sanity and my joy in this work. And so what do you do to keep on going? One, really leaning into your network of other friends who are also in this work. Making time for friends and family is really important, so we remember who we are outside of our work. Because at the end of the day, the work can go away. Who are we? And I think that it's we're going to need to invest a little bit of time in the upfront of giving us our all. But at the end of the day, we need to take care of ourselves. And I found that that has been incredibly critical in my decision to keep on keeping on when it's been hard. Resilience means pivoting if you need to pivot. We're not lambing and kidding, for example, this year. Sorry, I'm going warp speed. Animal husbandry. Remember that. Ooh, I got one of my shepherds who's on duty is coming in the waiting room. Hi, Noe. Remember that our animals are the backbone of what we do. One, if our animals aren't doing good, we're not going to be able to have a viable business. But two, we absolutely have to ensure the longevity and the health and happiness of our animals for viability of on the finances side. Also, we love our animals. Also, for prescribed grazing in urban areas, we are spokespeople for agriculture, for land stewardship. We want our animals to be healthy. And we also want to be able, when our animals, let's say after kidding or lambing or calving, sometimes body condition dips. That's an opportunity to have conversations when people who are not who are not savvy with livestock, that's an opportunity to say, hey, those ewes or those does, they've had babies on them for months now. And so, just like a human, you get a little bit, well, I've never nursed, but my understanding is the nursing can take a lot out of you. And you can see that in our livestock, right? So when it comes to animal husbandry out in the public, it's really important that we do our best also for productivity and disease and parasites, et cetera, et cetera. Right here, we're working the corral. We only spot deworm. Animal husbandry is a whole other section. Stay tuned for more there. This is one of my big sells to the fire folks. I'm like, do your weed whippers self-replicate? No, they don't, but ours do. All right, talked a little bit about these things already. Why is it important to choose the right animal for the job? Well, we just talked about, animal health. Highlander cattle in Southern California, the mini Highlander cattle. I'm not going to say anything. But you folks who know cattle and Highlander cattle in Southern California, I think you understand what I'm talking about here. Choose the right animal, choose the right breed from the beginning, and best to source animals that have a similar ecology, climate, and vegetation. They are going to do better. We have a vet literally on call retainer. It's almost worth it to have a vet on retainer or a retired sheepman, sheep gal, or cattle, have somebody who's been around for a long time that you can call up, FaceTime, be like, what do I do with this? Having protocols from the get-go of standardizing what your annual or seasonal protocols are is really important. Okay, I want to have enough time for questions, so forgive me if I go through a couple pieces quick. Coal hard, what does that mean? Not coal bush hard. Coal hard, you want to refine your flock or herd to the animals that are going to serve you well. We have a 3 strikes, you're out. Probably some of my shepherds are laughing. They're like, yeah, we have a 3 strikes, you're out. On any sheep or goats that jump, any dogs that bite, 3 strikes, and they're out of there. They're gone, or they're at our sacrificial pasture at home and we're feeding them, and that's not a good business move because you end up collecting animals very quickly. I see people laughing. You get it. Yeah, those are the animals that have names, not ear tags, but they absolutely cannot be on the job. Remember, mitigating risk, liability. That is our job as business people and employees. We have some tools. This is just a little preview. This is something that I've been encouraging our team to use. It's really me on the back end. This is how we plan. We use I've modified the holistic management grazing planning chart to be a contract grazing management tool. We have, so we're going to go into that a little bit next week, but I did want to show you this is how we're doing some of our management of our grazing contracts. How to find money? Well, I will go through this, read all of this, very important step. Fundraising, you're going to have to be scrappy from the get-go unless you are well-resourced from the beginning or you come into a family business. This has been one of the most creative parts of building my businesses is the fundraising. And I got to tell you, it will take endurance. And endurance, I guess, is the big one here, is get creative on how to find cash money to start. Grants are going to be your best friend from the very beginning. American Farmland Trust. There's many organizations that are announcing where grant funds are. If you're not good at grants, find somebody who can help you, who wants to give you a leg up. So important. Fundraising is one piece, and then the other piece is making the money. I'm taking out an operating or a line of credit this year or next year because I've never have for emergencies, and it's absolutely critical because you might have a client that doesn't pay you for 3 or 4 months and you need to pay your people their rent. Really think about having a pot of gold for the rainy days / rainy months forevermore. Flooding, it sucks. Okay. Financing. So Olivia already talked about some of these things. Diversifying our enterprise is really important. We get paid as service providers in prescribed grazing. I built my business to be a prescribed grazing service provider. We are all in different contexts. Prescribed grazing might just be an additional enterprise for those of you who are already in business. And many of us have to kind of juggle and do a lot of things when we're starting our business. And I think that it's important to look at benchmarks of when we add enterprises or test enterprises. Only spend as much money on a new enterprise as you're willing to lose. But I think that's like a tenet of gambling or something. I don't gamble, but it's all a gamble. I see more laughing. Thank you. Cost structures, don't look at this because your numbers might be really different. California is California. Average cost right now in high density, gnarly places to bring animals is $1,200 an acre. We try to get clients where we are in, I'm going to make sure, we have longer term contracts, and so we will reduce the costs. But the cost structures right now, we're seeing a cost per acre, a per head per day cost, which is not typical for prescribed grazing, but more of that custom grazing or having your animals held. let's say you want to send your animals away in the off season if you own them, the per head per day cost is probably what you're going to see if you're going to pay another operator to manage your animals, or if you do that for another operator, a per head per day cost is something that you're going to see. That is more a likened to custom grazing. Monthly and weekly estimated rate of grazing, I personally like that because it helps me with scheduling. Legal liability, I already told you, get legal as quickly as you can. Farm Commons is a really great resource. This, I don't know if you see this, says my farm action plan for cultivating legal resilience. Do stuff like this. Farm Commons is a really great resource. Have a lawyer that you know before you even get started. Have a lawyer review contracts. Have working agreements with your employees. FarmLink in California has a great contract grazing template. I am not sure of the full-on accessibility to everybody, but I can find out if that's something that we can disseminate. Get the best insurance you can possibly find and afford. What does that mean? Well, I will show you. Whoa, loading. Oh, let's see if I can find that. I can't find that. I will show you what our insurance looks like at some other moment, if I can pull it up. So operation stuff. I'm going to go through this pretty quickly because everybody, again, context is different. So I'm going to just tell you a little bit about like behind the scenes with Shepherdess. We use net fencing, also called devil's lace. For you, those of you who run cattle, you probably will vomit thinking about building this fence. That's true. Go ahead and do that. Net fencing is what we have to use for our crazy projects in high risk areas. Electrical, we have gone through every iteration of solar charging, whatever. And what we've come down to is don't get deep cycle batteries because it's going to dip and then you're going to have a disposable deep cycle battery program. And we don't want that. So ion phosphate batteries for our electrical to charge our solar has been water. Again, these are just like a few little like notes for those of you who are already in this stuff. 500-gallon water tank and trailer, way better than 1,000-gallon, because if that thing tips, your truck tips, and that could be a nightmare for the safety and liability and risk and everything. 500-gallon max, water's heavy, safety first. We have 1,000-gallon and I am sketched out every day. We use it if we're not like cruising through, say, just flat irrigated ground. Equipment and vehicles, we have to start scrappy, whatever it takes, but don't skimp on the trailers, whatever. No, don't skip on your hauling truck because you don't want to break down in a very not good place. So just know you might have to might have to skimp around for a while, but eventually you go new. Invest in the good stuff when you can. Save your warranties, use your warranties. You're going to break everything. Save your warranties. I'm telling you, it's so important. You'll save thousands. Shipwreck. Look at Stephen. That's one of our Grazing School of the West Shepherd Boot Camp attendees from Compton. Represent. Kenco Fence Supply. Everybody goes to Premier One, but I really like Kenco. Redmond Ag, great family. They've made a new sheep mineral mix. Electrolytes in the summer. All of the animals, I say electrolytes in the summer, and Redmond is great for that. Valley Vet Supply, again, have your vet on retainer and make sure you have all of your meds that you need. Porta Yard is something that we use, really important. A trailer that we can move around, corral system. And then I already told you about the ion phosphate batteries. If you have more questions about that, save questions later. I'm going to continue. Okay, left hand side of this, if it is your left hand side, that is a welding cart modified with a flexible solar panel, our energizer and deep cycle battery. This is like, I think we call this one RTD2, R2D2, whatever. It is a prototype and it's getting better all the time. And there will be one ready to sell to you in a couple years. You can rig stuff, get creative. Also, right-hand side, beautiful bundles. You want to roll your fences as tight as you can, because at some point you're going to need to carry 4 to 6 of them uphill, and they're a lot easier to carry. Don't worry, I don't do that. A lot easier to carry the tighter they are. Get your shepherds or your helpers to have integrity about how tight they can roll their rolls. And the self competition is really great, because then I don't have to tell them, you know, roll your rolls tighter. That's pretty. That's our ranch home base. That's you're supposed to laugh at that one. TV, marketing. Let's see where we are at. I'm going to wrap in just a moment. Marketing is super key. I would say the key to success. I was started being really well branded at an early age, and it's actually helped. It's really helped my businesses. And I do want to make sure that, you know, even though we're in this because we love land and livestock, we are also public educators, public information officers, as they call it in fire and other places. It's really important that we deal with issues face on, control the story. I have so many fun stories. Let's sit by a fire and I'll tell you all the sketchy things that I've had to turn upside down into PR success. Again, your operation is a living PSA. Signage, key. Have your people be able to communicate to the passerbys. There are marketing potentials everywhere when you are grazing in the public eye.
We're going to talk about that next week too, Cole. So actually, maybe we want to skip these next 3 slides and put them into next week. Branding, Canva,
Perfect.
like we're already going to do that anyway next week. So come back next week for good, more marketing.
And where to look. I'm going to just leave this here. I'm going to keep on going, because I think that for those of us who are just getting started, we really do need a Allen Nation calls it a whole on. You need a first really good project to get started and base your operations to learn from. So I would say, you know, starting out with one project and then expanding from there is going to come more naturally than just looking for grazing opportunities any way you can. These are the types of clients to consider, all of them, public and private. We're going to go into this next week. Contract break even. This is something that helps us to quote our contracts appropriately. Our projects. Continuing education, I added this. You know nothing, assume that, and you are great. You can do this. Show up to everything. Get on newsletters. Go invest in going to conferences. Like, you need to meet the people, especially those of you who are looking for the next step in your career. Go and meet the people. It's personal relationships that are really going to be supportive. And I think that that is the future. That is the now for resilience in our work. We need each other. Competitive colleagues are going to actually be some of your best friends, because when you're in a pinch and a bind, it's actually those folks who are regional that will come together and support you. Also, if you're new, get to learn the current landscape of grazing and the businesses that are around there, learn the history and tradition, know at least 5 families within 100 miles from you that have the same species of animal. We need to pull together. We need to support each other, show up for one another, keep on learning. It's scary. I care for you. You got this. I think I'm done now. Soil centric is a good opportunity for more opportunities for education and resources. And they're a partner of the Grazing School of the West, big supporter. And without further ado, Olivia, do you want me to go through these?
Okay, I'll do it.
Okay.
So I'm also going to drop Southwest Grass-Fed Livestock Alliance link in the chat. If you guys want to go scroll back through the chat, a lot of things that Cole mentioned, I dropped the links in there for, but this is another place for really in-depth business learning. You'll see me, but also other collaborators. And it's a pay what you wish annual membership to get access to videos and resources. So wait, real quick, let's go back to those slides. Well, no, I can just talk to you guys about them. Inside of the presentations, there's 2 slides full of other resources as well with live links. Check those out. And then next week, we already talked about it for those who signed on late. Same time, December 10th, digging deeper into tips and tricks and tools, brand names, actual templates, marketing, mapping, talking to each other, budgeting, bidding contracts, that kind of stuff. And then I am going to drop my email in here because we are doing office hours on December 17th, first come, first serve, but with preference for Coloradoans. And it is a session with me and Cole. No presentation. Come to the table with your in-depth questions, ideally about your planning that you want to be doing, but really anything. It's an intimate group. They've always been really great. And so that's my email. And if you're interested in having time to unpack your actual ideas, that's what it's made for. So with that, we're going to do 10 minutes of Q&A. Cole, thank you for your speediness. That was a lot of information. Also, y'all, I'm dropping Cole's email into the chat. You guys are welcome to reach out to us for anything else. And like we said, presentations and templates coming in the next couple of days with evaluation, which Kavera really needs you to fill out. So please do that too. Okay, I did see in the chat really quickly the brand of the flexible solar panel. That's an easy, quick one, Cole, if you know it.
Yeah, I forgot. Yeah, there's this, I think he's the solar guy. I get all of my products from I don't want to give Jeff Bezos my money anymore, so I'm really trying to go straight to the source. I will make sure that is there. You can get a lot of different flexi ones. It's kind of, you got to try out what works for you, and I don't remember. I'll get that to you, Shannon. I'll text you.
Taylor and Hayden, did you guys see other things in the chat that came in earlier?
Yeah, there's one that says, can you say more about your charging station? Is that a car charger?
Oh, yeah, my charging station. Oh my gosh, I love this stuff. Okay, so we have so the whole reason we have the solar set up is so the solar is trickle charging our battery that then has a charge controller, meaning it's regulating how much power is coming in and out. And that from the battery goes to your energizer. And we like to use the Premier One, actually has an energizer. So StayFix sold to SpeedRite. SpeedRite units are very expensive. Great. They have a great warranty. They can fix them. But Premier One actually created a 4 joule and an 8 joule. For every 10 watts of solar panel, you need 1 joule. So that's how you size your Energizer. We want to always have a backup battery that is already charged. And so we can swap, test your fences, test your batteries. You'll destroy very expensive batteries by not maintaining them. And it's really important to electricity is an esoteric art. So there's nothing I can say more than that.
All right, what else? Let's see, we're a big group, so instead of just hollering at, well, I can't see all of you though.
Let me
Let's
see
do
if I
hands.
can yeah, hands. Do a hands thing.
There's one too in the chat that just came in. She said, hey, I had a question about how, if no one ever had the money to hire their first employee, then how did you, I think they're saying, how did you do it?
Yeah, great question. So what I mean by that is that it never feels like you have enough money, right? You don't have their salary sitting in the bank. It is a bit of a financial leap. And so whether that's also timed with the moment that you take your next leap in either capitalization through outside investors or a loan or a line of credit or go after a grant, those two, or friends and family, which I'm going to push back on Cole as Grant's being your best friend from day one. I think your friends and your family are your best friend from your day one. Number one financing step, friends and families, low-hanging fruit, which in our community we call the low-hanging macrame basket of avocados, just to mix it up a little bit. Anyway, that's where you start. Then you go to grants. That's where we're going to get some sort of leg up for this next step of expansion. The point is that it's right when you know you're ready to grow and you're scared. And so don't be as scared as you would be otherwise, because everyone has been there and you don't have the X amount of dollars that you need to support them ready to go in your checking account. Know that you're going to need to expand to get there. Your job is to stop doing the day-to-day that the employee is doing in part so that you open yourself up, because what is your superpower? Making more business, right? That employee is your first hire is not the person that is getting contracts, getting jobs, getting relationships, and really managing the business. Now your time is free to expand a little bit. I'm not talking about like expansion writ large. I'm talking about miniature next step. Hopefully that makes a little bit more sense now.
Okay, I think our next one here is more specific to a wet region in Western Washington. What do you do for winter barn space / winter confinement? Scaling barns with a growing flock is a challenge here and a big expense. We don't lamb on pasture and need space about November through March and April.
What do you do? We don't have any infrastructure. None. Nothing. No shelter. None. Southern California. But believe it or not, I actually don't think Southern California, with the amount of heat now, the amount of rain, we might need to think about that. But I think we're coming into a new world where we might need to take our animals. Traditionally wild animals, they go up in the summertime and then they come down to the valleys. These are like, the deer kind of animals. Well, I think in California, traditionally we'd go up into the Sierras and down into the valley, but in the same state, kind of the same bioregion. But I think that we're entering into a time where we're actually rotating our animals maybe much, much further. Ideally, we could walk animals to New Mexico when it's 100 degrees here. We can't, but I think we need to start looking at how to build resilience through partnerships of people who are in places that have what you need for your livestock or can manage your livestock elsewhere. But as soon as you start feeding animals in the off season, there goes your margin for your prescribed grazing business. So you might have to look at different models where you might not even own your animals.
And I also would just say, backing up one step, I mean, I think that's super great creative thinking advice to just twist the business model on its head, but it's like, what we've been talking about a lot of this time is taking the time to know what you need, right?
Mhm.
And so knowing that you want that barn space and making a goal of when you're going to achieve it, whether it's in 1 month or 10 years, I don't really care. The point is that you're recognizing a need and you're making a pathway to getting there.
Mhm.
That's more important than the freak out. Oh my God, I fucked up. I didn't have this thing and my businesses and my animals are dying, which is definitely a risk. It's like, okay, what am I doing to get there? That's my piece of advice.
Nice. I think we have time for like 1 or 2 more questions. We got 2 minutes. So how to control for spread of disease when joining herds and flocks?
Biosecurity is so huge. Oh my gosh, great question. So don't mix them. Have a closed herd. I mean, that would be my suggestion. You can't always do that, but I think it's incredibly important before you start mixing animals. Say another operator wants to come in and you have 800 animals, get a job done. You need to ask them what are your what's your parasite protocol, your vaccination protocol. When you're buying, say buying rams, really great to get a blood sample before you do that, blood and fecal, and that's cheap and it just takes time to do that, but that would be ideal. I technically you do an isolation period. The more animals that are coming and going and mixing, the more problems that you're going to have. I would highly recommend looking at a closed herd model or just running different groups with different animals. So, yeah, separating your groups if you have multiple contracts at the same time. But Stuff You Should Know podcast is really great. And you could find one about biosecurity. You could find a podcast about biosecurity. Premier One also has a really great vet blog, so you can look up that. Really good communication on where you're getting your animals. Even let's say you're going to buy a small little trailer of animals, I would do a FAMACHA. If you don't know FAMACHA, stay tuned. We'll teach you more about that at some other date. But look up what a FAMACHA score is. That FAMACHA score will tell you if you have anemia in your animals. If they do, if you're starting to, if they look wormy, hopefully you know what that looks like. Or if they have the anemia, then I would actually do a round of dewormer on all of those. That's my personal preference. I don't sell my animals for meat, so I'm okay with the dewormer thing. But great question.
All right, I think we're gonna wrap up. Shannon, I'm gonna put your question in the next, I'll write down your question and make sure it gets addressed in the next session. But I'm gonna let everybody go and enjoy the rest of their day. But thank you so much, Cole and Olivia. This was so much fun, and this chat is like amazing. Thank you. Thank you everyone else too for adding all of this information. I am like, my brain is a million miles an hour in this chat. So super stoked to see everybody next week. Thank you so much for joining us. And yeah, have a good rest of your day.
Thanks to you all.
Thank you. I hope this was helpful.
It was. Thank you, Cole.
Thank you.
Well, hello everybody. It's so nice to see everyone's faces again. Some repeats from last week. This is the Graziers Toolbox. My name is Taylor Mulia, and I work for the Quivira Coalition. And this is a partnership with Grazing School of the West. We are so stoked to be working with them. And also special thanks to the Colorado Department of Agriculture's Next Gen Ag Leadership Grant for funding this series.
Thanks, Taylor, and thanks to all of the folks at Quivira for having us here. It's been a wonderful set of series of webinars this year, and we're so excited for the second half, getting into some more nuts and bolts stuff about grazing businesses. So I'm going to share my screen, and Cole and I are going to go back and forth. All right. How's that look, everybody? Okay. So for those of you who were not with us last week, we just wanted to take a minute and tell you who we are. My name is Olivia Tincani, and I'm an educator and an advisor. I work directly with farmers and ranchers most of the time, designing and executing farmer training programming and doing individual coaching and advising and technical assistance on all the stuff you don't want to think about, which is all the back end of the business, which is all of the really sexy stuff for me. And most of my clients are nonprofit organizations, so that my services are free to you all. And I'm from California originally and based overseas. And I'm also a very proud member of the Grazing School of the West family, and has been just, I have to say, great working always with Kavira in bringing some of these business techniques and practical training tools to all of you through the course of this year and for years to come, hopefully. So, cool.
Thank you. We all need an Olivia. If my name is Cole Bush. I am the owner operator of Shepherdess Land and Livestock and co-founder of Grazing School of the West. I'm an educator, grazing practitioner, business owner, handstand enthusiast. I love goats and sheep. And I am stoked to be here today. Thank you, Kavira Pals, for inviting us. Without further ado, let's get started. Context. Yes. Hello. So I've been working in prescribed grazing, the industry in California for the last now 14 years, on and off, working on the ground with animals, developing my business, studying how shepherds are being trained around the world, and really figuring out how do we create viability in the work of land and livestock. Thank you. So a lot of you, I'm seeing a lot of familiar faces. So I want to say thank you so much for being here. And I'm so stoked that you're all coming back for more. And we're going to share with you some content that a lot of you who have been around haven't seen yet. So this is great. So targeted grazing, prescribed grazing as a business, as an industry, is rapidly growing around the West. And in fact, we're seeing prescribed grazing being used around the world. And it's the intentional use of sheep and goat grazing, small ruminants, and also larger ruminants to achieve ecological and public safety goals. We are service providers, not just land stewards working with livestock to produce food and fiber. Right now, there's a huge demand for more grazing businesses and more grazing practitioners, as our governments are recognizing we need to have all hooves, hands on deck to address impacts of climate change, particularly fire. It's in almost the middle of December, and we're in high fire threat here in Ojai, California, and Southern California with the Santa Ana winds. We can still be grazing and getting paid to be grazing. Right now, we're trying to take a little bit of break, so we're not getting paid to graze for fire fuels abatement, but there's an opportunity for us to be paid as grazers for most of the year. So today, next slide, please. We're going to talk about some of the tools that I have been personally using through my profession. And everybody has a different relationship with technology, but what we're going to do is just show you what has been developed, what has been used. And these tools are really geared for those of us in prescribed grazing, for fire mitigation, integrating grazing into crop systems, land management, and general property vegetation management. So prescribed grazing as a vocation is just, it's just one way that we can be, you know, careerist in grazing. We did talk a little bit about custom grazing last week, and a lot of these principles overlap with custom grazing as we're looking at the health of the land and the health of the animals. And most importantly, we have to remember, how do we stay sane and healthy and well in the process? Oh, one more thing here. These selected tools have been developed in partnership with FiberShed. Olivia has been, Olivia and I have been working with FiberShed for many, many years. And it's through this partnership that we were able, with Grazing School of the West and FiberShed, to build these tools and methodologies. Okay, I just wanted to say a little thing about technology. Technology is, and we're talking about not low-tech technologies, but software technologies, the technical tools, the things that we are looking at all the time, you know, these ones. These technologies are only as good as they are used. We do not need to overcomplicate things if we are not savvy nor interested in using these tools. But I believe most of you are here because you want to know what's out there for us to get the work done. So the reasons why I use technologies, and I've been finding that it's very, very important in not just not just day-to-day management of my business and my life in general, but in learning how to adapt for resilience. So I use technology to keep records. Of course, in holistic management, we know that we need to plan, we need to test it, we need to adapt, and then we need to try it again and try to tweak it to be even better. It's an evolving process. Communication in prescribed grazing as an ecosystem service provider, we need to be masters at communication. That's external and internal with anyone that we're collaborating with. Like, how are you communicating with your livestock hauler? Are you using pinpoints? Are you using, what are you using to communicate with all kinds of folks that are necessary in operations? Communication also is imperative for reputation, because if there is something that is gone awry, the first thing we need to do is address it before someone else addresses it and creates their own story and then shares that story, especially in the advent of social media. Things can get real wild real quick. Last week, I believe I told a story where somebody off the I-5, a little road next to I-5, what is it called? The road that follows the highway. Somebody pulled over, saw sheep and goats and thought, Bedia, let's eat dinner, and opened up the fence, actually tipped the fence over. It's electrified. They were bummed, but they tipped it over enough for the whole entire herd to leave at 5 p.m. on Friday during an evening event. And I had animals all over the place, even some going up the I-5 on-ramp. I mean, absolute nightmare. Social media went wild. I was not even in the state. I was in New Mexico. I get word of it. I immediately hopped on and started replying to all of the things that gone viral. At that night, I was on 5 o'clock news, and I was able to turn that catastrophe, no animals hurt, shepherd was on site with dog, animals were back in less than 10 minutes, but I was able to turn that into a PR wonder. We have next. Sorry, I know.
Okay, so this is, yeah, thank you, Cole. That's a great intro, but we're going to switch over to the really exciting spreadsheets first. We're going to go from I-5 to Excel. Real fired up right now. So before we do that, I just wanted to give a little bit more of the preamble here. Essentially, like Cole and I were lucky enough to take FiberShed's calling to really create whatever we collectively thought the industry wanted, and that's what these tools were coming out of. And at the end, we're going to prompt you with a conversation about what you all would like to see, in hopes that Grazing School of the West can continue to be building tools that are modelable and reputable and replicable for all of you. So today we're going to feature I'm going to really basically screenshot 3 of the kind of more financial technical spreadsheets that we developed for you with the FiberShed project, and just give you a visual of them and quickly walk through how they work. And then as a follow-up to this, you're going to get a full list like a PDF of a description of all of the tools we built for a fiber shed. And we'll send that to you with our presentations in the next couple of days when Taylor sends her follow-up, which will also include an evaluation. Please give us your feedback. Super helpful for both Kavira and for all of us to know what resonates and what doesn't for you all. And then be in touch with us to receive the actual tools. Some of the tools that, so what I'm going to look at right now real quickly, is a herd growth calculator, a contract break-even calculator, and a cash flow budget template. Other types of tools that we have include a grazing agreement, the business plan templates you saw last week. They're listed in that same handout as well. They were developed in concert with the same project, and a very hefty meat yield, carcass yield and profit margin calculator. My fave. Some of you guys have seen that before. Please be in touch as you guys take a look at that list if you're interested in learning more, and a hiring guide too. So with that, I'm going to switch over to a different situation real quick. Bear with me. Okay. So our first one is our land production and herd growth calculator. How does that look for everybody? Can you guys kind of see that? I'm going to try and get as much of it on the screen. How's that? You guys see the whole little square? Pretty much? Okay, cool. So this is super basic. For those of you that have not started out and are here listening in, thinking about your dreams and ideas, dreaming about goats and sheep and cows and calves, but not yet doing anything, this will be super helpful. It's a tool that can be used hypothetically for planning into the future. And for many of you who are already in grazing operations, you might be doing this on a piece of paper, on a sticky note, in a notebook, and that's all great. We're big proponents of analog. Absolutely, wherever you start is wonderful. And this can be sort of your next step up into just recording where you might be going with your herd growth. All of our tools have some cute little instructions at the top. And essentially the rule is always blue is where you enter stuff, and black and gray are formulas. So let's try not to mess with those. We also try to send you guys locked tools so that you can't mess with them, but that also limits how you might want to change them for yourself, because we really invite you making these tools your own, using them as jumping off points. I've had clients that have actually taken a tool and rebuilt the entire tool with the exact same functionality and outcomes, but just completely differently visually laid out. And that to me is a success story. They made it their own, right? They made it into something that worked for them, even though the information output was exactly the same. So this is just herd planning, right? The number of ewes you start with, and then watching your trends by entering in the number of ewes that you might need to replace, and then your conception rate, your lambing rate, your weaning rate, your predator and sickness loss. And you're all thinking like, how do I know these things? Well, you're watching and you're observing, and at first you're estimating, right? And then over time, because you have this little chart, you're actually able to track and know where your rates shift to. And what it spits out to you is the number of essentially production lambs you're going to have, whether you use those for meat or you keep them and reintegrate them into the herd, which you can do. Even though in this example, it sort of assumes that we're going to get rid of most of those. And the females that go back into production for the next year, we're going to add those to whatever replacement ewes we buy. We're going to get rid of our culls and start all over again. And what you're tracking over time is what you end up with in terms of ewes and production across all of the years. I know I'm going super fast, but again, this is just like a visual look at something that you can dive more deeply into once you sort of receive the tool. And we're going to do questions at the end. So hold your questions on that or drop them in the chat, and we'll try and claw them out of the chat as well. But I do encourage you, if you have specific questions about the tools, you're going to write me, get the tool, look at it, and then write me again, and then I answer your questions. It'll be much more effective. Okay, so the next one is a little bit more exciting. This is our contract break even, and it's calculated on a per head and a per acre basis. So essentially what we're trying to do is reinforce the idea that there are costs that go into running every contract job. There are also costs that are considered your overhead and don't change as variably as the costs for each contract do. This tool has two functionalities. It allows you to look at a specific hypothetical job before you bid it and play with pricing, enabling you with some estimated guesses about what it's going to cost you to do the job before you slap a price tag on it. And then what it also does is allow you to build multiple tabs for multiple kinds of jobs and look at your overall holistic business as if you assigned a certain number of acres per type of job. What does your holistic grazing business income look like? So it's really a forward-looking planning situation, but the break-even template, and Cole, maybe after I do this explanation, you can speak to a little bit to how you use it, can be done retroactively. I don't really suggest that, for analyzing what happened, but it's absolutely useful for that too. And the most important thing is that you start to use this kind of thinking so that you're setting out with some clarity and some educated guesses about whether you're going to make money or not on a job. So we're putting in our price per acre and our acres in the contract. Again, we can toggle between those all the time. So we have a total contract amount that we're making, an estimated number of days and number of head, and the number of herders we think we're going to have on site. And the first thing you'll see in our cost of sales, so the costs that are directly relative to that contract, is our herder wages and expenses. This number is linked to this super sexy tab over here, which looks at everything it costs you to fund a herder for the entire year. This is under the assumption that you're paying them essentially an annual salary, which you may or may not be doing, but it can be tweaked to be associated with an hourly salary. But the important thing here is that you're looking at all the other extraneous costs, essentially that sheep camp costs, right? And this is applicable either for H2A or not. Again, you can change these topics, right? We're not keeping you to this, but what we want you to be doing is how much does it cost for you for the year to keep a herder on staff, right? Then what it does is break that down into a prorated amount for the amount that herder is on the contract. And it multiplies it by the number of herders you assign to the contract. So if you're playing with how many people you want on the contract because you know you're going to be tight, you can actually see the difference here, right, in the costs automatically by just changing this number. And you'll see that number changes, right? So then I've got all these other singularly assigned costs for that contract. What do I mean by that? They're not part of me running my business. They're a part of just running this contract. So if there's a project manager just for this contract, what are they getting paid? If I know I'm going to have to supplement and feed and minerals, not when I'm at home ranch, not when I'm on irrigated land in the winter, but on contract, hauling, fencing, but that's really for sort of like replacement, not, if I know I'm going in and I'm going to need to ramp up fencing, it's not like my general fencing supply. And the same with dogs. We consider dogs and vet costs really sort of part of the overhead of the operation. But if you knew you're going to be adding dogs just for this contract, we would add to this. We have reformatted this tool also for custom care grazing for cattle. So if that's something that's interested in you, it's very similar, it just has slightly different words so people don't get freaked out about sheep and goat words. Let me know and I'll send you that one too. And we always build in a 5% of overage of the things that we're not thinking about. It's an automatic calculation. You could take it out. I don't suggest you do. It's sort of assuming that we sometimes don't know what we don't know. And so we get a total for all of our costs for this contract, broken down into per acre and per head per day. This way we can actually change those variables if we want to, knowing that we can calculate on those two different sort of factors, right? And it spits us out as gross profit. Like, how much money are we actually making? My recommendation is that it must be positive. Something must be positive here. We can't be losing money on contract. Now, what margin you make on that contract is totally up to you. But we'll see in this next little tab that we're looking at everything else your business costs as well. And we're looking at the margin or the profit per acre and the profit per head per day as well. Just depends on how your brain works. So what I suggest is everybody takes the template, makes a copy of it, and then starts inputting numbers for different kinds of contracts. It could also be the name of the specific contracts. I've seen grazing businesses do that, and they have their whole year mapped out with individual contract names here. We designed it to be also about the type of contract. So if you have a different pricing mechanism for higher risk jobs, that's this example here, right? And then we've got this little space where you're able to actually look at, if I did, 500 acres this year in this sort of vineyard scenario with a lower price point and a general cost of this, which is coming from a specific tab that I've created. It's not linked to a formula. It's something you input after you make that tab for that vineyard style work. And then I did 500 acres of this sort of higher end vineyard work with this amount of costs associated across multiple job types. What is my total, essentially, acres to be sold in each job type down at the bottom to both, I know I'm covering my costs, so I've looked at that on the individual tabs, but to cover what my business costs to run. And that's a number that I insert here, just looking at all of my overhead, like one little big nut, not all the costs associated with every job, but everything else. I know I'm using some terms that you may or may not be familiar with. Please don't be intimidated. I got lots of financial training webinars I can point you to help you understand them. So the last one, really quickly, is a 3-year cash flow template. So this is a budgeting tool that we use to look out. It can be used for 1 year, 2 years, as well as 3 years. We like to look at least 2 to kind of get a runway on what the business is doing. And it actually allows you to manage your cash as well. What's the difference between a budget and a cash management tool? It's this little section down at the bottom where you're actually tracking money in the bank alongside what you're estimating. So this sweet little slot is what you start with in your bank account. And down here, you're actually going to tell us what your ending cash is too. And above it is going to be what your budget has predicted it to be. So this is why we call it a cash flow tool, because it will tell you when your cash is going to dip below zero in your actual bank account based on your estimations. So if I cruise back up to the top here, just really briefly, it looks like a P&L or an income statement. That's on purpose, because what we want to be able to do is budget and estimate looking forward and have something be spit out from our accounting software if we're using that matches it. And it's okay if we're not using it, but you could easily build a little spreadsheet to track your income and expenses that looks just like this, even if you're not using accounting software. And again, I have lots of resources to float you should you want to dive deep in those areas. So we've got income from different kinds of enterprises here, right? Contract grazing, livestock sales, lamb and goat, fiber, and plenty of slots to add for other enterprises you might be running. Then we've got the cost of doing those sales broken out into similar areas, right? So which costs are specific to just meat, slaughter, and processing, which costs are specific to the grazing component. And then all of our operating expenses, so our overhead, right? You'll see that herder salaries are in here because it's a different technique to look at your break even on the contract cost, right? I don't want to get in the weeds there about that. But so all the other things that we need to run our business, our salaries, our professional services, travel, transport, insurance, animal care, field expenses. And down at the bottom, there's actually an area for your capital expenses. Those are your one-time big costs that you anticipate for infrastructure, equipment. And these are in accounting accounting terminology, these are expenses that live on your balance sheet for those of you that are familiar with that. And if you're not, that's okay too. But what they do affect is your actual cash outflow. They don't usually affect your income on a P&L statement because they're these one-time costs, but obviously they come out of the bank account, right? So we want to see those charges and you anticipating when they're going to hit and which month. And then we have a financing tab, which allows you to think about where you might be getting cash infusions from, whether that's going to be from people actually coming on as partners in the business and equity relationships, or debt that you take on. And that can include loans or line of credit. And it's programmed so it actually can calculate for you your debt payments across the different months, and so that it feeds into your bottom line. Look at your cash after all of your income, all of your cost of those sales, and all of your operating expenses. So I know that that is like a crazy rapid fire look at these things, but it's just to give you an idea really of the spectrum of tools that we have on the business side to help you actually really set up good practices from the get-go, or adopt them at any stage that you're in. So with that, I'm going to go back to our presentation. Cole, you still want me to drive for you, or you want to share?
Go ahead. Thank you so much. And you're a master at time. Sorry, my storytelling eats up time. So I was like, I'll give you 2 minutes for my I5
storytelling. We need the storytelling. It's a much easier way for learning too.
All right, good. All right. Thank you. I wanted to say 2 notes, Olivia, that I took while you were speaking. So I'm looking at some of your faces and you're like, paying a herder, this is my cost for paying a herder. I'm the herder. I totally understand that. That was me at the very beginning, but I did not want to do that for very long because I knew running the business and operations was going to be a lot. So at the beginning, it's okay if you are the herder, but begin to, yeah, I see the laughing, but begin to think about if you had a partner or many partners as grazers, really understanding the cost of having one of those herders or grazer companions is really important. And think about yourself when you're starting about, don't build your business in unviable circumstances financially. We have to remember, pay ourselves and plan for profit. Takes a little bit of time, but always hold that close. And then the second one is yes, we don't want to, or no, we don't want to bid projects where we lose cash money. However, when we're starting, we have to make decisions when loss leaders make sense. Showing our neighbors that this is how we're doing it. Will you be our partners, neighbors? We're starting our business. We'll give you a discount this year as we're learning, but have them make sure that they know that they have to pay you in the future. But just know that in certain circumstances, loss leaders are good. Do not do work for free, but value doesn't always have to be cash. And then also another last piece, and then I'll get going on the other tools. I promise, Olivia.
That's a great point. I'm super glad that you brought it up in terms of when you're starting out and the marketing value of those jobs. But you got to know that you're losing money. I just want you to know how much you're losing on that job.
Yeah. Thank you, Olivia. We're a dynamic duo, you and I. And then the last little bit is when we're starting, we're hungry. But guess what? In some places, there's already an industry prescribed grazing. Get to know what the history and culture is and the current landscape of competition with our competitive colleagues, and do not undercut those who are established, because you actually bring the bar down of the industry. So really, I think it's really important for us to know what we're getting into in the landscape of the industry, because we need to rise together and not be cutthroat in a competitive way when we're trying to find resilience in society and in business. Okay, tech tools. So I'm telling you what we use with Shepherdess, what my experience is. It's my business. Every business might be different. And a lot of y'all have probably your own tools, and go ahead and share them. Liv, I saw that you already started that. That's awesome. Okay, so let's keep on going. We'll start with the tech tools that Shepherdess uses. The first tool that we are using is a field margin. And we use field margin as our mapping, primarily our mapping tool. We're going to also talk about OnHunt X, which I believe most of you already know about that. Our utilization of the tools that are already integrated into our mobile devices and our operating systems that are free. Connect Team, which is my team management platform, and then PastureX, which is a developing application specific for prescribed grazing, developing by myself and my shepherd, who also is a coder. Hats off, Noe, he's also a shearer. Next slide. So I'm going to go faster for field margin. For those, anybody who knows or uses field margin, can you please drop in the chat if you're familiar? So field margin, it has been developed in the UK, specifically more so for farming and crop systems, but we've really kind of tweaked it to work for us. We use this for mapping area of our contracts, communications. All of those little dots are different features that we're marking on our home ranch. Herd movement. Shared notes, you can see that little note guy. Next slide, please. Our paddocks, we changed the color of our paddocks based off of what has been grazed, what is currently being grazed, future potential paddocks. And this is cool when you have a team of 5 and you want to know what's the next paddock that we're grazing. There's a cool tool where you can walk it and it follows you, so you can get the exact paddock size or the paddock boundary. Next slide. And also you can see that yellow line. The ranch with all the little features on it, that's our home ranch here in Ojai. That yellow line is our aspiring, let's herd the animals down the road to our off-season ground, which is a private school. We mark our shepherd camps, we mark our gate codes, we mark all of that stuff there. This is an awesome tool, a lot of cool features for free. We pay pro. You can manage and record year by year. Next slide. Next. This is a good little example, a screen grab of notes. This is a note to us to check out what kind of impact we had on this elderberry that we hammered. So the next year, when a herder is building the fence, they can see that note, walk over to the elderberry, take a photo of like where it's at that same time of year, and we could see and learn, okay, we totally decimated this little guy, or he or she, I'm sorry, I'm genderizing my elderberry, or gendering my elderberry. Yeah. Could be fine. Okay, next. On OnHunt, a lot of us know this tool who become savvy grazers early on. We love this tool because we can actually have layers that tell us property lines. And then guess what? Also the taxpayer info. I mean, I know we have to be respectful, but if you're looking at a map and you're like, wow, why isn't this being grazed? Maybe this landowner would want to pay us to graze it. You can on OnHunt, you can click on that parcel from the layer of property lines, and it'll give you the taxpayer assessor contact. At that point, you can write a beautiful letter, handwritten or typed, signed in ink, send it in the mail. Maybe you got a job. Next slide. Also, there are other mapping layers that are pretty cool. This one was you have the historic wildfire maps. You got the US drought data. I mean, it's really cool to understand your watershed where you are primarily grazing in. Really get to learn the history of the area. Eventually, if you don't already have these skill sets, you're going to be able to look at a piece of land and know, has it been grazed Historically, has it been grazed recently in the last 10 years? When was the last fire? These are all things, experiences that observations that we learn from over time to read a landscape. But this type of data on a landscape really helps us become more informed as we fine tune our lens as grazers. Next slide. All right, so we use a ton of built-in tools. I overcomplicate sometimes, and just know that it's okay not to use the tools if they don't work for you or your team, but you have to try it first if you're trying to solve a challenge with technology. So this is something that has worked really well for us. It is a shared notes or shared reminders in Apple and iCloud. It's a built-in app in your phone. It works, I believe Google has one and Apple has one. You can share the reminders list. You can assign it to somebody in that shared group. And you could even put deadlines on it. When someone finishes it, they click it, we know it's done, and we move on. This is also really great for workflows, for daily tasks, things like this. It's really a very, I would say, like SOP, standard ops light. Next, please. This is also really cool. So I use my photo apps, my photo search features, update system. If you update system, you can get some of these cool features. So this is on my computer. I go to places, I search a general area, or I take I kind of just zoom in on an area. I can basically go to any of the spots. Yeah, they're all your photos. But if you know that an area is one of your contracts, you can go there and then see historically all the photos that have been taken in that one area. So that's it's a quick cheat to a good photo documentation if you take photos of your locations that you're grazing. Also, even better when it's a shared album with your other grazers, because then you can see also photos that they took historically. So if you're like, I wonder what this looked like last year, I didn't use Solo Locator, which is another app for screen grabs, you could just go to here. Raise your hand if you've used this kind of feature, looking at it. Cool. All right, I have some tech nerds. Okay, keep on going. Okay, Google Shared Drive. I have a Google workspace for shepherdess land and livestock. What that means is all my team has access to shared folders, which include a grazer's knowledge hub. I've compiled all of the white papers, all of my research, all of the checklists and information over the years into the grazer's knowledge hub that any of my employees can access. I also have transparent financials. So if my herders did want to poke around in my financials, my P&Ls, all of that, they're able to see that. And I personally hold that to be really important. But these Google shared drive folders is really great. So you can see that I have spreadsheets, I have Word files, I got on the right, you can kind of see how I've organized my, you understand how folders work. But having a shared Google Drive in your operation is a really great way to organize, so you have one place for all of your safety checklists, all of your SOPs, all of your whatevers. Go on. So this is really exciting. Shepherdess Land and Livestock, myself and Noe, as I mentioned, we won the CAF, the California Alliance for Family Farmers Tech Innovation Award last year. It was a very, very generous, but pretty small for an app development award. But we are building Pasture X. I built these wireframes back in 2016 after winning a contest to be able to go to this tech school in San Francisco. And so the wireframes that you see down there are from back in the day, and finally we're building it. So what Pasture X is a base camp hub to project manage all of our contracts. It's internal facing and external facing. We can put in where all of our herds are, all of the information about the herds, the progress of our contracts, all of the client information, our calendar of when we're predicted to go where, and our project status. Again, it's internal facing and external facing, meaning we're able to share with our clients any of the content that we have in Pasture X. We're utilizing also some of the technologies that are open source. We're looking at ArcGIS and actually some of the mapping tools from Field Margin to see how we can utilize what's already there. If you're interested in this tool, let us know, because the more we can prove there's a need for it, the better chances we have to fully develop it and have it be utilized, and hopefully in the future become an industry standard for this industry. Next slide, please. Olivia, thank you, Rain. Okay, contract grazing calendar. Last week I mentioned this. I just wanted to show you how we have altered or adapted the holistic management grazing plan calendar to work for us in our prescribed grazing season. So what you see here on the far left are the general names of the contracts we have, the estimated acreage right next to it. And then those color blocks are different herds. And so we can see, if we play around with dates and different dates of grazing or rates of grazing, we can kind of slide around and see where we're going to be in 6 months or 4 months or 30 days on estimation, to kind of get an overview of where are we going to be when. I've used that red line to determine our breeding when we drop the rams in, and maybe that is something different. I don't know where the red, that's a long time. Try to keep your animals in for less than that. But there's a good chance I left them in that long. Anyways, next slide. This is a good tool. Connect Team, when you have a bigger team, Connect Team for me has been fantastic. You have to pay to play. But again, this is a tool where you can assign tasks. You can have your timesheets where employees can check in, check out. You can have mass updates that everybody sees. It's a mobile device. It pings my employees when I have an update. What else? There's a lot of cool features on this thing, and I really enjoy using Connect Team. There's a lot of other team management softwares. I know another grazing operation that uses Slack, for example, but Connect Team has worked well for us. But it only works if you use it. There are periods of time where I'm MIA on it and it's hardly used. So again, it's only works if you use it. Next slide. Thank you. Okay, just quick time check, Olivia. Where am I at?
You're we got about 12 minutes for you, Miss Cole. So you're doing pretty good.
Okay, great. Whew. All right, branding and marketing as public education. As my nightmare story turned into famous on the news channel in Los Angeles at 5 p.m. Not me, my goats and my shepherds. Branding is so important when we are looking to elevate prescribed grazing industry and also our own operations, or us as land managers, if we're custom grazers getting paid to manage other folks' livestock. The tools that we use, when I first developed this tool, this like tech tool deal with Olivia, Canva was not as used. I was an early adopter. Now it seems like everybody uses it. That's great. But just remember, your assets are only as good as your photos. So find your photo friends who are really interested in what you're doing and get a whole media folder filled out of good photos so you can plug them into Canva. I've worked from the very beginning with a dear friend, Andrew Plotsky of Farm Run. He's the proprietor of Agrarian Design Studio, and he really helped me think about what is the whole ethos of my brand. At the same time, when we're thinking about what is my brand, of course, we're going to choose things we like, but remember that your business is separate from you. Remember that your identity should not be locked up into your brand. Because I've personally had that experience where I'm like, I am my brand, I am a shepherdess. Well, what happens when you take the animals away from a shepherd? It's okay, you're still a shepherd. It's however you want to identify. But what the point is that the brand you're building is something that wants to stand alone. So if you extracted yourself, it has personality, it has a tone, it has a vibe of itself. I use Planoly and Adobe Express to varying successes to link up my Facebook, my social media, and plan my social drops. I've taken a break from social media. That's okay. It's totally okay to take a break, but it's really important to engage with folks who are following you, not just clients, but to cultivate the community of all of us grazers in this work. I'm sure a lot of you heard about this, for example, from Instagram or newsletter or whatever. Socials are important to cultivate community and learn about educational opportunities. I like signage. I think it's great. QR codes are cool. You got to pay for it though. I love my sign. And next. Brand style guide, creating your visual language. This was the second iteration of visioning. Where do you start? Well, I took the landscape and the colors of the evening of Ojai, and that turned into my color palette. I wanted a nod to kind of like, you know, traditional brands, but like wanted it to have maybe a modern feel or a little bit of like what is that? And it's actually done a really, people are like, what is that? Is that an owl? Is it a fallopian tubes? What's going on there? And I'm like, it's a goat with glasses. Yeah, farm run. Great, go ahead. You probably can't book him. He's real busy. Canva, we already talked about Canva. It's your one-stop shop to all of your digital needs. Go ahead. Oh yes, again, the brand kit. I've worked with a number of different designers, and actually a very renowned designer here in Ojai helped to do some of this logo for the Ojai Valley Community Supported Grazing Program. Guess what? Swag is passive income. And I've learned that it's actually pretty cool how many people want to rock our wares. So know that your branding and marketing is really important in a lot of ways. Again, cultivating community. How many of y'all have hats from like all your friends' operations? It's pretty awesome. Next, please. Again, signage. I have a brochure that I drop off at different neighbors, trying to get, you know, understanding, get buy-in. We also have door hangers saying, hey, we're coming to your neighborhood. If there's any issues, please contact this number. Pro tip, do not put your own phone number in there. No, spend the money and get, we use Verizon One Talk, and it's an app that you can have your own dedicated phone number for your business without getting a whole new phone. Check it out, One Talk. It's depending on where you're at. Some of y'all are in rural situations, but when we're in the middle of Los Angeles, the last thing I want are people having my own personal phone number. So we have a business line that my employees all have a One Talk app, and the line goes to all of their phones when there is a call. And the shepherd on deck is the one who picks up that call. And then if they don't pick it up, it comes to boss lady and I handle the deal. Signage, don't put your personal number on there. Next. I did show you a little bit earlier in our Google Google Drives, that we have checklists that are always evolving and being used to at different it's really hard at the height of the season to always use your checklist, but the safety checklists are imperative. I have learned that you have to laminate everything, and you have to make duplicates, and you have to make it really easy for people to see. One talk, that's right. Inventory checklist. It's really great to know which herder is losing what when you actually standardize the herder's kit, or every truck has a kit, or every trailer has a kit. Having kits will help you understand. If you look at one unit for, say you have 3 herds working, say that's aspirational for you, but say you have 3 herds working, you'll know what that kit will cost for 3 herds if you standardize your list of equipment and tools. And you'll know what things are essentially disposable, unfortunately, what gets lost all the time, what needs replaced all the time. I'm really big into inventory checklists. I still have a long way to go. I'm preaching what I'm aspiring to, but that is something I feel really strongly about. And it's great to have somebody on your team who's an organizational nerd, who has OCD tendencies. Okay. Best practices and to-do lists I also shared with you already. Oh my gosh.
All right. You did it.
Did it.
With 4 minutes to spare. It was awesome. Thank you, Cole. I think, you know, the detail and all of the things that Shepherdess Land and Livestock is doing is so valuable, you know, just those little tidbits. So that's why we made this training, to kind of dig into not just the big picture planning stuff, but the small picture. So if you guys have any questions about the specifics, again, we're super available, and, you know, just shoot us an email and we'll drop our names in the chat. But so for now, just to refresh, for those of you in Northern California, Fiber Shed Producer Program, who is the co-sponsor of making some of these tools, has a full suite of business curriculum and all of the tools available, in case that applies to you, because there's a lot of trainings associated with lots of other business practices as well. Otherwise, get in touch with us. I dropped my name and email in the chat. I'm going to do it again. Cole, do yours too, so you guys can just have this. Copy it off of the chat, put it in your email server, and we want to know what you want, and we will send it to you. Go ahead, Cole. What were you going to say?
I don't know if I'm actually going to respond to everybody. I will do my best. Do not take it personally. If it's something really important, use every social media way to bug me to get me to respond to you. I might miss it, but I promise I care about you.
Great. Sophia, email. Lastly, Taylor already mentioned it, but we've had lots of people bump in and out. Next week, we're doing an office hours. It's first come, first serve for 5 folks. We have 2 signups already, which means we have 3 slots. We're preferencing Coloradans, but please let us know if you want to be a part of that. It is just hanging out with us for an hour and a half. It is a time to bring your ideas and your questions, as broad or as specific as you'd like. Ideally, we're talking about questions that give rise to a group conversation, right? We want to be there supporting you and have your peers support you in this gathering. We are not presenting anything. We are not preparing anything. So it will be powered by what you bring to the table. Email me if you'd like to be a part of that gathering. It's the same time next Tuesday. And I'd love to hear just in the chat throughout the next half hour, anything else that you think of that you would like to see, because we would love to know what you feel like is missing from your operation or from your work, even if it's something really far-fetched, because you never know, we might just make it. So from here, we're going to take 10 minutes and do Q&A with voices and faces. And then we're going to do a little breakout and have you guys talk to each other and talk about what you're doing and brainstorm a little bit about what you each use and share with each other. So I'm going to stop my share and we can go ahead and maybe we'll start. Taylor, can we excavate from the chat a couple of the questions that came through? I did see some come through.
Yes, for sure. Okay, so Sophia a little while back said, does California necessitate a herder on site at all times? Do you pay overtime wages for that? In Minnesota, we just left the goats alone and check them regularly.
Can I take that one?
Yeah, go for
For
it.
sure, that's you. Yeah.
Put Olivia on it. No, you do not have to necessarily have a shepherd on site, depending on the contract. So municipalities, like, you know, power companies and things that are, yeah, government, generally they'll be interested in having, no, requirements to have a shepherd on site. But private landowners, no, it really, our job as service providers is to mitigate risk and keep everyone safe and healthy and happy, and non-dramatic. So not the people or animals, but the situation. So I like to have a herder on site unless we're in Ojai and we have a response time less than 15 minutes. I require everybody to have a 15-minute max response time for any call or any emergency, period. In terms of the wages, California is really wacky and different from the rest of the country right now in the legal definition of a sheep herder and goat herder. They're actually considered separate, and there's a sunset clause around. It's a huge thing. What does shepherdess do? We do not have one herder that is dedicated full time to one herd. We have a herder come in for 3.5 days, and then another herder to come in for 3.5 days. And it's kind of this, we call it a swing shift. So it's kind of like an EMT or a fire person, that kind of thing. So there'll never be overtime, like a 40-hour deal. Technically for the overnight thing, it has to technically be a choice for the shepherd to be there overnight. But because of the integrity and the understanding that the animals are their responsibility, like leaving at night is not a thing. And we have a very cozy camp, and most of the time, gosh, almost 95% of the time we're in absolutely gorgeous places that like people would pay lots of hip camp money to camp out at. So it's a program of attraction. But stay tuned. There's going to be more legal stuff coming up around this as this industry grows.
Mm-hmm. Awesome. Shannon asked, do you have a platform where you keep employee paperwork, signed safety docs, emergency contact, etc.? Currently using Google Docs, but wondering if you have a better system.
Yes, we have that in Connect Team, and then also our payroll program, Gusto. We're able to, that's a cute little person on the hi. We're able to keep everything in Gusto and Connect Team. Redundancy is great. Have a Google Drive. Have things that your shepherds, herders can drop in their own stuff that you don't have to collect yourself. Have redundancy. So we have it in 3 different places.
Awesome. I think that was it for the chat, unless I missed anything. So if you have a question in the chat that I missed, just raise your hand or come off mute, or if anyone else has a question.
Laura has a question. Laura, you're going to have to help me answer this question because you know more about the insurance. So SB 675 is a bill that just was passed this year, and it has put prescribed grazing on par with prescribed burn at state level through CAL FIRE and the Board of Forestry. It's huge. This means that government funding is going directly to prescribed grazing as a large-scale fire mitigation tool. I believe that the insurance company is going to be, the insurance industry is going to be coming down. The opportunities are going to be developing over the next year or two where premiums can be dropped if people are contracted with prescribed grazers for extended fire fuels abatement and fire mitigation and fuel breaks behind their properties. It's coming. I need folks who know how to do that. I can't do it, but I would like to do it. But it's going to happen. Promise. Thank you.
So we got one from Larry about HOA.
HOAs are a pain in the ass. Sorry if any of you are in HOAs. Yeah, you got to find a liaison, a good person inside the system, inside the HOA community to be your advocate internally. Go to board meetings, make friends, build trust connections. HOAs are great to contract with, but you don't want to be the person in the middle of all of the interminglings. But I do suggest HOAs are a great way to graze contiguous acres.
Okay, Olivia said, does anyone have any experience with collaborating with private landowners and state or federal land management agencies, kind of piecing those together? Do you want to speak to that, Cole, or we can also, if anyone else wants to jump in?
Yeah, I was going to invite anybody else. I work with all of those agencies and private, but anybody else have any experience? State and federal are very different than private landowners. Sophia, you have? No. Yes? No. Okay.
Can I clarify?
Olivia, yeah,
clarify the situation? It's a private landowner that I believe is getting, I think it must be state funding. So it's Department of Natural Resources, which is it's a Washington state agency. I haven't met with them yet. That's happening in a couple of weeks. So I was just curious if anybody had any tips and tricks.
I have a question. Is it you said it's Washington, it's not NRCS? No. Okay. I would find out if it's similar to the NRCS Conservation Ranching Program, CSP, because the NRCS does give private landowners money for prescribed grazing for invasive species management. However, it's a very, very minimal and probably won't cover your cost, but it's a good start. I would reach out to Alex Machado, who works with Washington State Land Trust, and she would be a great technical assistance provider to direct you in the right place. Yeah.
I've also got somebody at Washington State Department of Ag I can drop in, Olivia.
Cool. That'd be awesome. Appreciate it.
Yeah.
All right. Shannon asked another question. In your amazing spreadsheets, how do you use the tool to estimate if more than one camp needs to be at the site for just 1 or 2 buffer days? For example, during shifting of seasons, there becomes a time when flocks need to move around to finish jobs or find feed. Does that make sense?
Shannon, if you want to pop on and
yeah.
I guess, for example, like when bud break happens, some jobs are like, you estimate, right, how much, and then all flocks need to be moved over. So then what you wrote on your spreadsheet is different because now like 4 teams are there. And how do you calculate in like reality if it's worth it to like walk away from the job to start a new job, or like estimate which
I think
go ahead.
Sorry, go ahead. Well, just one thing in terms of like, let's say you've used the contract break even to estimate that job. Like, I'm not clear if you're talking about that or grazing like stocking chart, but either way, if you've estimated that job based on that tool that I can send you, there is that per head per day cost. So that you can flex the head on that job and know exactly how much that would cost you in each day that you had a different amount of animals on that.
So say it was 500 and then you added 800, adding the 800 would then be adding your labor costs and all that. That's like that tag or that.
In that sense, I would actually create another duplicate and do the number of days on the contract that the first amount of animals were on, and then do for just those number of days, and then do it with a different number. Right? Does that make sense?
Yeah. Okay.
So that you have the cost of the split contract number of days, but you should be able to do that also in your head by just knowing what the per head per day cost is that the original contract estimation calculated, right? So you know you're that much more per head per day. So if you're adding 300 more or whatever, then you know you're X amount of dollars more than what you originally estimated.
Okay.
I'm not sure if that's the right answer to your question, though.
No, it is. It is. Yeah.
Okay. So at this point, we're going to turn you all loose. Sorry, I automatically muted myself. We're going to turn you loose on each other, and we're going to break you out into groups of 3. Let me just share my screen real quick again so I can tell you what our cute little prompts are for you. So you can read them. Give me a sec. Sorry.
I don't know if it's in the prompt, but understanding understanding what other people use is like one of the best ways to try new things. I just shared.
Yeah, that's what we're going to be talking about. So have you guys talk about. So go ahead and introduce each other, right? Name, where you are, what you're doing, if you're running your own operation, what's that's like. And I suggest keeping that to like a minute, each of you. And then share some success stories or some nightmare stories, do some storytelling, right? That's the funnest way to learn, as we always know from Cole.
If you're
so much more exciting.
If you're healed from the event.
You're healed from the event. If you're not, please don't create more trauma by sharing the story, but you could also be working through your trauma by sharing the story.
That's next week. No, just kidding.
Right. Next week is a therapy session disguised as office hours. That's like my whole job.
Literally.
So for those of you that are established, share some of your stuff, your tools, your tips, some things that you utilize. And what about for all of you, some things that you would like, or some things that you don't have, and problems that you don't know how to solve for. And maybe you take these 10 minutes together to kind of brainstorm how to resource yourselves to getting those tools, or getting to those solutions. Who do you each know, or how would you do that problem solving? So I will drop these prompts in the chat once you're in your groups again, so you have them. So who you are and some basic vitals, fun story, scary story, trauma or not, and what do you need and what do you want, and how can you guys brainstorm to get it? And then we're going to give you all 15 minutes. Is that true?
Yep.
Yeah.
15 minutes, maybe a little less. And then we're going to just take 5 minutes to harvest and have you guys drop in the chat. And we're just going to see a little bit about what you guys came up with before we say goodbye.
Alrighty. Let me pause this recording.
Thank you. Here's some of what y'all said to each other. Whoever wants to share out from their little group, or drop in the chat. And as you guys are gathering your thoughts, I just want to remind everybody that the way to sign up for office hours is via email, and office hours are Tuesday, December 17th at 9 a.m. No preparation on our part. Come with your questions and your ideas to discuss with your peers openly and with us. And you need to email me, and we'll see who shakes out in the wash, and preferences given to Coloradoans first. And there's only 5 slots. Just a reminder. Thank you. So, who wants to share with us some things about their group? Lara, big hand. I like it.
Hey, thank you guys. This is amazing. I just wanted to share that the women that I had the pleasure of being with just are badasses. And I am just stoked to be in the midst of all of these badass women. And you too, Jarvis. And if there's any other guys I missed. Oh, and Larry. But for the most part, I just love this female power in a system, in a country, in a culture that we talked about this, we have to work 3 times as hard to prove that we are as good, if not better, than the dudes. So keep being badass, ladies.
My group talked about different ecosystems because the 3 of us were all in very different ecosystems, and some of the differences between like larger scale and smaller scale grazing, whether you're doing like small residential properties or more like municipal kind of easement, HOA, commercial stuff. So just the differences in those. And then we also talked about like I do basically entirely invasive plant management because wildfires are pretty low concern currently. We'll see where I exist. Whereas in, Southwest, more arid climates, it's a lot more fire mitigation focused. But just talking about like there are so many operators, especially in the Midwest, that are doing invasive plant management.
Epic.
Awesome. We have time for one more share out. Or no?
Well, I'll just take a moment just to say thank you so much. It's so awesome to see familiar faces and new faces. And I'm really excited about our industry. This work is incredibly challenging, super grueling. And if you can find the reward and remember the heart and compass, your center compass of why you do this, just keep on coming back to that. And if you can't find it, then reach out to somebody that you've connected with in this work. And it does really take us supporting each other to move forward, both in business, but also in community. And we are a growing herd of individuals in this work. And I am honored and feel privileged to be able to support y'all and graze on.
Thanks so much, everyone.
Yeah, thanks to Kavira and thanks to all of you for good participation.
Yeah, we'll see you all next time. Take care.